We're going to move over now to Norma, who is going to be presenting on psychological health and safety at work, managing psychosocial risk.
Thanks, Patricia. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to tell you about our standard. Last year, when I presented, we were at the committee draft stage, and I explained the process of getting a standard idea onto the ISO table. It starts with what's called a new work item proposal, and Canada, based on our experience with our CSA standard Z1003, advanced the proposal to put a standard in psychological health and safety as an offshoot, in a sense, of our already existing occupational health and safety management system standard, which is 45,001. So 45,001 is an OSH management system standard. And the quote that's on the screen here was from the background. And here we recognized in 45,001 that occupational health and safety involves more than just preventing harm to workers from more commonly identified hazards, such as physical, chemical, biological, and work design hazards. So at the outset, we realized that the standards needed to emphasize the organization's responsibility for promoting and protecting the mental health of workers. In the research study that led to the justification and the acceptance of the new work item proposal, we found that mental health and stress management commonly ranked as the first on the list of emerging health and safety concerns. Analysis found that 1 in 3 workplace disability claims related to mental illness, and 70% of the short and long-term disability costs are attributed to mental illness at considerable cost to people, organizations, and to society. These estimates were calculated prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So future forecasts predict that the economic burden of mental illness will increase significantly in the coming years. We expect the increases in stress and anxiety as workers fear exposure and illness, face financial challenges, take on additional responsibilities related to childcare and education, and experience too much togetherness, putting a strain on family relationships. Depression may result from isolation and restriction on normal physical activity and social and recreational opportunities, and from the uncertainty as there's no evident light at the end of the tunnel. I speak from a Manitoba perspective as I say that. And workers may experience loss and grief from bereavement. 45,003, which is a guideline standard, is intended to provide guidance to organizations who are seeking to identify psychosocial hazards and the risks they present. The definition of psychosocial risk is in the standard, and it's there on the slide. A combination of the likelihood of occurrence of exposure to work-related hazards of a psychosocial nature and the severity of the illness, injury, and ill health that can be caused by these hazards. So the standard goes well beyond managing psychosocial risk to include promotion of well-being at work. Well-being is defined as fulfillment of the physical, mental, and cognitive needs and expectations of workers related to their work. And well-being relates to all aspects of our working life, including work organization, social factors at work, and the work environment and hazardous tasks. And those categories will come back in a moment. ISO 45001, like all management system standards, follows a common structure that models the plan, do, check, act approach to facilitation of integration of various management system standards. So if you have a standard dealing with quality or environmental management in a workplace, your OSH management system standard should fit. So the clause titles of 45,003 are the same as in 45,001, excuse me, allowing for direct comparison between the organization's conformity with all management system standards it implements. The next two slides focus on the content of the organization and Clause 6, which is planning. But first, I want to draw attention to Clause 5. It emphasizes the roles and responsibilities of the organization's leadership and its obligation to encourage and facilitate the removal of barriers to worker participation. Hierarchical leadership is no longer appropriate. Inclusive leadership focuses on the contribution of both leaders and the team. So Clause 5 reinforces the importance of participation of and consultation with workers and understanding their needs and expectations. Worker participation means being involved in decision-making, while consultation means to seek advice before a decision is taken. One very important and useful aspect of all management system standards is the consideration of the context in which the organization exists and the examination of external and internal issues. In 45,003, these are the issues that most affect psychosocial risk. So external issues may include economic, technological, cultural, social, and political climate within which the organization exists. This includes the regulatory framework within which it operates, especially with respect to legal requirements, and now, of course, including public health orders, and economic and market conditions. Internal issues are those that are specific to the organization and over which it has more influence and control. How it is governed and managed, the commitments and directions it sets out in policies, objectives, and strategies, and the resources it assigns to achieving the intended results. Changes to the way we work in this pandemic era have caused us to reevaluate the adequacy of our technological resources, such as information systems and processes, and the adaptability of our human resources to the new reality. Another key internal issue is the relationship between the organization and its workers, and the extent to which there are shared perceptions and values. Internal issues then look at how the organization is governed and managed, and how roles and responsibilities are assigned. It looks at the organization culture, management style, communication style, the respect for privacy, the organization's commitment and direction with respect to psychological health and safety and well-being at work, and other factors such as demographics, the size and nature of the organization's workplace, the characteristics of workers in the workforce, the competence of workers to recognize psychosocial hazards and manage risk, location of work, worker terms and conditions, and flexibility, the adequacy of and availability of resources. So Clause 6 in an OSH management system standard is the planning clause, of course, the plan phase and the Plan Do Check Act. Here we have in 45,003 grouped hazards of a psychosocial nature under three main categories: aspects of how work is organized, social factors at work, and work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks. There was a lot of discussion as we came through the process of identifying these titles. As you can see, there's a possibility for things to be sloshing around or overlapping between the headings, but we did settle finally on these three. So planning involves identifying the hazards and assessing the risks and establishing objectives and developing the processes necessary to deliver results in accordance with the OSH policy. Now, there may be a separate policy and objectives to deal with psychosocial risk, or they may be identified in the OSH policy as required to be developed in 45,001. There are tables in Clause 6 which identify examples of hazards of a psychosocial nature. So, for example, under how work is organized, you would find roles and expectations, the extent over which the worker has control or autonomy in their jobs, job design, workload, hours and schedules of work, and job security. In social factors, we would identify the hazards relating to interpersonal relationships, leadership and supervision, civility and respect, recognition and reward, work-life balance, violence, bullying, and harassment. In the third category, tool and equipment availability, suitability, reliability, maintenance, and repair, the nature of work tasks, the inherent danger that may be in a work task, and workplace exposures and conditions. This is the do phase of Plan, Do, Check, Act, and involves implementing processes to eliminate hazards and reduce psychosocial risk. Again, the standard has a strong emphasis on prevention. Support for implementation of plans at the operational level requires establishing, providing, and maintaining human, financial, technological, and other resources specific to the operation to achieve its objectives with respect to the management of psychosocial risk. Competence is an important attribute and is emphasized throughout the standard. Special emphasis is placed on the role of training in building competence and in reducing the potential for injury and illness due to exposure to psychosocial risk. The operations section identifies the actions to be taken to address risk as identified, and these actions are identified as controlled measures. And they relate to work organization, social factors at work, and work environment, equipment, and hazardous tasks. Intervention can occur at three levels. Primary, by providing organizational level controls to prevent harm. Secondary, to assist workers by raising awareness and understanding. This is accomplished through effective training and other appropriate measures. And tertiary interventions, which are reducing harm, the harm of exposure through corrective action and support and rehabilitation. The check phase involves performance evaluation and improvement. So performance monitoring and measurement helps to confirm the processes for identification of hazards, risk assessment, and control are in place and are operating effectively. Performance evaluation relies on accurate data and measurement of the right indicators and forms the basis for decisions about improvement, workplace psychological health and safety. Evaluation of effectiveness of improvement actions provides the direction for the continual improvement of the OSH management system and performance in relation to the management of psychosocial risk. Just as a side note, as we continue to develop additional standards under 45,001, we're now developing a guidance standard on performance measurement, which will help organizations to identify and develop indicators and determine the appropriate ways to measure success. So here's the good news. We are scheduled to publish the standard. It was approved on a ballot at 97%. There was one European country, actually Spain, which denied support for it. But there was massive support from the ISO members for acceptance of the ballot. We are in Canada embarking on a process to get permission from ISO to make 45,003 freely available. There's a process that you apply to ISO, a member body applies. So Canada will take this initiative through the Standards Council of Canada and will initiate requests to ISO to make it freely available. And this will be view access. So when this happens, it will be available on CSA's website to access. Now, the question will be asked about our own Canadian standard, CSA Z1003, which is our national standard of Canada. At this point, there is no intention to withdraw it as a national standard in favor of 45,003. But in fact, we will be looking at it again to consider reaffirming it as it is or revising it to incorporate some of the additional aspects of 45,003. There is information there for if anyone's interested in additional information. I can be prepared to respond to any requests. Again, thanks to OCAL for offering the opportunity for us to provide information on this standard. Thank you. If you have questions, I'm available to answer them now.
Great, thank you very much, Norma. Great overview of the standard coming out, and good to see it's coming out soon. So that's great. We do actually have a couple of questions here for you. One from Marnie saying great review. And did the US support this? And how do you think this standard could be used most effectively by nations, internationally, or by organizations?
Right, yes, the US was present at the table, very involved in the development through ANSI, which is the American National Standards Institute. I think that the one thing that we learned, as you know, we participated with some 80 countries around the world, is that there's a variable level of development and sophistication in addressing psychosocial risks. So I think it'll be taken variably in different parts of the world. There are one of the things that we encountered that was really interesting was the unwillingness of some countries to address the issue of stigma, you know, the kind of aspect that we are hypersensitive to in Canada. But I do think that there's going to be uptake around the world, perhaps more so in countries such as Australia, Japan, Canada, and the European countries who already have a good basis to develop from.
Okay, great, thank you. Kind of question comment here from John. Interesting that work-life balance is classified under social factors at work rather than work organization.
Absolutely. And that was the point I tried to make about the difficulty of trying to box these different things. And we did have many, many hours of debate. Everybody agrees it's important to be addressed, but the question is, where should it be addressed? So these buckets, in a sense, got a lot of care and attention. The tables are, I think, there for consideration as opposed to be really directive in terms of how you treat work life.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. And another question, are any tools or resources specific to the standard contemplated internationally or nationally in Canada or another English-speaking country?
That's another very important point. We have excellent tools and resources in Z 1003, which we tried to get into 45,003 as annexes. You know, these are sort of the how-to as opposed to the what-to. And I think there was a tremendous push to get 45,003 complete. So the tools and resources exist, in my opinion, best in our own national standard as opposed to in ISO 45,003. That said, that's one more reason why we thought replace 1003 with 45,003.
So just a quick comment from Lenore, and then we'll close it up. We're at 12 o'clock now. So Lenore says, workers' consultation and participation has sustained by research to be a key feature for a healthy work environment, but it's hardly a common practice in workplaces. Yes,
that's a comment that I think the standard has in fact addresses. If you look at the roles and responsibilities in the standard, both the OSH management standard and in 45,003, the obligation in the organization is not only to facilitate and encourage worker participation and consultation, but also to identify and address the barriers. And this, I think, again, is reflected in both standards, and it's a very, very important emphasis because we just can't assume that it's going to happen.
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Norma, for the presentation. Absolutely appreciate it. Thank you to all of our speakers today for their presentations. A lot of great information. We will be posting the videos and the slide decks online in the next couple of weeks. So please stay tuned for that. And just before we go, I do want to turn it over to Val to give some closing remarks for our last May Day event of this year. Go ahead, Val.
Oh, thanks, Patricia. And being between everyone and lunch, I don't have a lot to say. Just thanks for the speakers today and the speakers for all the previous 4 weeks. And we really appreciate your participation. We really appreciate your feedback in the evaluation and in emails of more content that we could offer, more tools that could be used in workplaces. And definitely this is our second year of an expanded version of Mayday Mayday. And I think we've all come to love it. It adds some pressure to our lives in terms of work balance, trying to put together 5 webinars in 5 weeks. But I think that it does, the continuity, it enriches the dialogue to reflect on different aspects, and particularly it's been so helpful to have the international engagement, which we do plan to continue next year. We are still planning to host the COPSOC network meeting next spring here in Hamilton is the plan, with a hybrid version, though, that there will be the ability for some people to attend virtually. And not all of it will be live, but certainly there will be content related to all the different countries who participate in that network in our programming for next year. But we also very much welcome ideas or questions from all of you that can help us make our workplace mental health content and offerings more relevant and more resonant to your workplaces or to the workers whom you're helping. So that's all I want to say. Thanks again. We'll see you next year. We may see you before that. A whole year going by is probably too long for us to not stage some other workplace mental health content, but at the very least, we'll see you next May, if not before. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.